Gentlemen, we back, man. Another morning. I'm excited, as I always am, and I know you guys are too. It feels like it's been a minute since we've done this. Our schedule kind of. Anyways, I'm excited that we're back and we got another episode. So, um, Morgan, you and I have been having this conversation a little bit lately, and so I think it's appropriate to talk about leadership, but more specifically because I think that some people are put in leadership roles that shouldn't be. And no disrespect to them, they can grow into it. They can learn, how to become a better leader. That it's something that you can develop. It's a skill you can actually, you can develop and work on. But a lot of times, people get thrown in those roles and they don't work on it. They don't develop it. They don't, try and master it and get better with people or whatever. And it shows, right? You have this person on the top, they just ends up being like a tyrant, right? And they're like, the way they run their ship, it's like it's a circus. It's crazy. Or they're just super hardcore and they don't know what they're doing and they just kind of, burn relationships and they just, they're not a good leader, right? They don't know how to work with people very well. So I know you have stories, I'm sure. And actually we've talked about some, so I want you to share some of those stories. But what do you guys think about people that are put in leadership roles that don't necessarily know how to handle that?
Go ahead, Morgan. You got this one.
Um, I think it's a huge issue. I think it's a huge issue. I think of a lot of people that I know that I used to work with in my prior employment that were given leadership roles, right? That were put into a position where they had all the authority and all the power to hire, to fire, to set salaries, to do whatever the heck they wanted. And it's interesting how leadership by position is a real thing, right? A real thing. And honestly, for all you guys that are out there listening, like I'm sure you've all felt that before. Where you're like, freak, man, I have this boss. They don't know what the flip they're doing. They're incompetent, but not just incompetent, right? Because I understand, like, you might not be an expert in your field, and that's fine. You don't have to be, because you don't have to be an expert in every single thing that you're in charge of. That's why you have key leaders, right? Key leadership in your organization. That's why you have key, whatever you want to call them, managers, department heads, executives. It doesn't really matter what you call them, but that's what they're there for. But the leader in charge of everything has to be able to have a greater vision, has to be able to run the show in a way to where it all works out. You don't have to be an expert in those particular specific topics. But the problem is when you're put in a position like that and you don't know what the flip you're doing. And it's interesting because one particular story that I have in mind is there's a couple of books out there that kind of talk about leadership. John Maxwell is a freaking guru when it comes to leadership, and he talks about there's 5 levels of leadership. The first level, oh, there you go.
Hey,
John Maxwell
product
101.
placement, little plug.
Little shout out, as if he needs a shout out.
We got you, all of our subscribers. You feel me?
The leadership by position is the first and the lowest on the totem pole, right? Where people get put into a position for they didn't do anything to deserve it. They were just given the position, and now all of a sudden they're just a leader, right? By position, and they're making all the calling all the shots, and they're really not meant to be in that position, and they do more harm than they do good. So one of the stories that comes to my mind is there's a guy that I know in particular where he's in charge of a specific sector, right? A specific department. And one of the books that a lot of businesses go by and they follow is a book called Good to Great, right? And in that book, it's similar to like the John Maxwell 5 layers of leadership. He talks about how there's a level 5 leader and there's a level 1 through 5. And level 5 leader is someone that basically trains themselves out of a job, right? And what I mean by that is that person is so good, is such a great leader that they've been able to train everybody there to know exactly what they need to do so that you could walk away and you would still, the job would still be successful, right? If you think about where you're at right now, whatever you're at as an employee, um, or maybe you're in a leadership position, if you walked away or if your leader walked away, would the operation crumble? And I bet you 99% of the time, your answer would be yes. And that shows you right there that you're not a level 5 leader. And most people aren't. So it's not something to like be down about, but that's the goal, is to become a level 5 leader. And so it's all about duplication, right? Duplicating yourself so that other people can get the job done, so you don't have to be there and it doesn't have to rely on you. But the issue is this particular like scenarios that I was thinking about is an example of a person that is in leadership by position that doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. And there was a particular guy was trying to trying to duplicate himself to be able to have the training so well that everybody that he's in charge of would be able to do it. And then his leader told him that, oh, no, like, you can't do that. You have to do it all yourself. Stop being lazy. And it just blows my mind when I hear stuff like that. And I'm like, you don't understand how great of a person that you have in your organization, but yet the leader is a leader by position, right? A leader by position. They don't even realize. They're like, no, you're just being lazy. You got to do it yourself. That is the dumbest thing that I've ever heard. So I think about particularly people that I used to work with. There's a ton of them that were given the administrative role. And then you say, well, what's the metric of being a good leader? And it's interesting because most of the time, the only thing that they think of is, oh, money. That's it. It doesn't really matter. The building can be falling apart. You can be having a freaking fire from the inside. Like, everything just horrible. It's a crappy environment. Nobody likes to be there. Horrible. Like, everything's bad on the inside. But on the outside, if you're making a good amount of money, oh, you're a freaking great leader. And so it's so interesting because I always find it very interesting when people say, oh, they're such a good blank, right? A good administrator, a good doctor, a good lawyer, whatever it may be. And I'm like, according to what? According to who? According to what metric, right? Because they made some money, but yet everyone's leaving because they don't want to work for that person because it's a horrible culture. Like, the metric, you got to understand what the metric is. And it's interesting because everyone has their own opinion about it. But more than anything, I've seen way too many leaders by position, and it's an issue. It is a huge issue. The number one reason why people quit is because of their immediate boss. And so, anyways, that's something that I've seen a huge deal of. And I think we need to address that because sometimes people are not meant to be in the position they're in, and they get big heads and they have the power. And it's very, very sad because it ends up making things horrible and miserable for the people that are quote unquote underneath them in their employment, you know?
For sure. What do you think the temporary or long-term fix for that would be? Like, if somebody is in a leadership role and they clearly don't know what they're doing. Well, in some area, right? They may know what they're doing in one area, right? Um, but then in the real one that matters, which is like retention and keeping your employees and having your team be happy, which makes your system and your building or your, whatever, work efficiently. How do you fix that, right? Is it something where it's like the person has to just work on themselves, or do you just work on yourself while you're still doing the job? Or is it something you feel like when you're developing yourself as a leader, you need to step away and like almost like remove yourself completely? You don't have that role anymore, work on yourself, and then you come back. How do you feel? Because obviously I'm asking because you were in a leadership position. You always are anywhere you are, but in your last job particularly, it was just like you're the top of the top and you have decisions to make. And I don't know if you ever felt like that before, where you felt like you weren't adequate for the job in some situations. Obviously, you are, but like where sometimes people feel like, dude, this is a lot. Like, what am I supposed to do? And they kind of just are forced to make a decision.
Yeah.
So I guess two-part, like, how have you ever dealt that before? And then also, how do people deal with that if they do feel that way?
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I think for sure. I think about it now. I was actually talking about it with a good friend of mine last night that I mean, I've said this publicly, so I'm saying it again. So if anybody out there is ever questioning and still asks this question, I'm never going back. So I'm just saying it out loud again on video in the freaking ether on the internet so everyone can hear. I'm never going back, right? But I said if I had gone back now, I know I would be 10 times better at what as an administrator of what I was doing before because of what I've learned in our business,
Mhm.
right? Because our business is a self-development leadership program,
Mhm.
right? It really is. So a lot of people ask, like, what do you do? They're not sure. One of the things that our business is about self-development, right? It's about self-development and becoming the best person you can possibly be. So I know now that absolutely, I think about certain things that I was weak in,
Mhm.
other things I felt like I was very strong in,
Mhm.
right? And I know now I would be able to go in and feel comfortable with those weaknesses that I would be able to be strong,
Mhm.
right? In the things that I struggled with when I was an administrator.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think one of the biggest things is you have to work on yourself. One of the biggest issues that I've seen with administrators or anybody, I shouldn't say administrators, I mean anybody in leadership,
Mhm.
is if they don't know the answer, they feel like, oh, I'm the leader, so I just have to like make give the answer,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of times they don't know what the flip they're talking about, and they're just like, oh, this. And they say it because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be looked at as a weak leader if I don't know the answer. But who said that the leader has to know all the answers? That's why you have department heads. That's why you have executives, managers that work, right? That are specialists in that field. So that's one of the things that people get confused. One of the things that people used to talk about with me in my facility, right, was with certain positions or certain scenarios, um, having a specific answer and a decision. But
Mhm.
I would always say, no, like you're the freaking specialist, right?
Mhm.
Like I had department heads that were supposed to be the specialist in that department. So freaking figure it out, right?
Mhm.
Like you're the specialist. Do you know what I'm trying to say? You're the one that's an expert in that field. So why are you coming to me with a dumb question when you're the one that's supposed to know the answer to that, right? Like I don't need to fill my head with all that information. You are the one that is the leader of that whole department. You're the one that's supposed to specialize into that. Does that make sense?
For
And
sure.
so I think people get confused. They used to say, "Oh, well, we just need you to give us an answer." And they used to get bothered as if like that was a bad thing. And I look now and I'm like, man, people don't understand leadership, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like I've evolved so much and grown so much that again, if I went back, it would be completely
Mhm.
different. But it's because I went those as experiences. Experience is one of the greatest teachers,
For
right?
sure.
And so I've been able to see what I can tweak, but I've also worked a crap load on myself. And because I've
Mhm.
worked on myself, I've been able to truly understand what leadership is. And
Mhm.
now I can spot it a lot easier when you have someone that's put into a position that they were just given the authority to have power over somebody. And it sucks, man. It's a crappy scenario when you see
Yeah.
that. So yeah,
For
to
sure.
answer your question, yes, I've been through it. Yes, I've made mistakes and I can see where I've improved, but it all comes down to experience and being able to truly work on yourself from the inside out.
Mhm.
Um, for sure.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, dude. I mean, you think about it like us being parents. If we, well, no, let's talk about us as parents. Let's talk about us as being sons of our parents.
Mhm.
If they would have told us how to do everything or just given everything to us, I mean, when we get older, we're just kind of like, what do you do? Right. And that happens. And that's happened to me, like a couple instances where I'm like, me being an only child and being spoiled, I'll be honest. In certain areas where it's just like, let me like figure it out for myself. When you're a kid, you're just eating it up. Like you're just like chilling, getting like the grapes fed to you, like getting fanned and all that stuff, like you're kicking Rome, or wherever it is. Someone's gonna jump in the comments, like, what the heck you talking about, bro? It's not. Anyways, so like when the moment you're like, oh dude, I'm living, but when you get older, you realize like, yeah, I wish, I did was like, I did have to figure it out for myself for certain things, or so I could be stronger and tougher and more, just kind of more witty and whatever else. So it's a really good thing, man. So for anyone who is either in the position of the leader, um, or who is being led, it's great to have people think for themselves and have them, you got to use your own, use your own brain. Obviously there's some things where you just don't know, like you don't know anything about, that's not your expertise or whatever. And so obviously go ask for help. That's the whole point of it being a team. But if you're in a leadership position, like you said, Morgan, like you're one of the department heads, like you're a specialist in whatever it is, I think it's great to have them use their mind, to use their brain and talk with their teammates, and so figure it out. So anyways, that was something I thought about for me too, because like I said, growing up an only child, there's certain areas where I'm like, man, I didn't have to like struggle like that, where I had to like figure things out or compete with siblings or whatever. It's just kind of like in my own lane. But I forgot the next question I was gonna ask you, because this is really good. Dylan, did you have anything to add to that?
Um, yeah. So as Morgan was talking, I had a couple thoughts. So first one was being a good leader. I think is being a humble leader, humility.
Mhm.
Um, Part of humility is being willing to learn and say I don't know when you're in that position. If you act like you do know, like Morgan was saying, how they're like, oh well, don't let them know you don't know.
Mhm.
Um, what happens is, for one, you're gonna start losing confidence in yourself because you're lying to them. Your team is gonna see that, and then you're gonna start losing credibility with them. And lastly, you're not gonna duplicate yourselves to them.
Mhm.
So if you don't know and you're making it up, how are they gonna learn?
Mhm.
So the first thing is to say, I don't know, let me get your answer.
Mhm.
And a great way to learn, if you don't know something, is have it be attached to your emotions. So for example, if you, let's say you're a leader that has a little bit of pride, right? And I don't necessarily mean in a bad way, but I mean like you're proud to be that leader and everyone looks up to.
Mhm.
And if you don't know an answer, you're probably gonna get shot a little bit because everyone sees, oh, Dylan doesn't know the answer. So you're gonna get your answer and you're never gonna forget that answer
Mhm.
because your emotions attached to it. Okay.
Okay.
And I thought of like, I don't know, Elon Musk, right? Imagine he didn't duplicate what he knows to his team. He'd be a one-man team. There wouldn't be Tesla around. He couldn't produce everything on his own.
Mhm.
And so part of delegating is to create a massive explosion within your organization.
Mhm.
That's why certain businesses stay small, because that one person doesn't want everyone else to know the secrets. So by you learning and delegating to your team, that's how you build a massive organization. There's a quote from John Maxwell. He said, when you increase your capacity to grow, you increase your ability to lead. The problem is when you're in a leadership position by position, you don't want to grow. You just want to get paid and do the bare minimum.
Mhm.
So you're not going to be able to lead. Right. So it kind of goes hand in hand. And the second quote that I thought of from John Maxwell was, to change yourself, you have to change the way you think. Again, if you're in that position just by the position, you don't want to change who you are. You just want to get the job done, the bare minimum, get paid, get out of there. And so I think when you switch your mindset and you understand that it's not by position, you start to want to change yourself, which changes your ability to lead others, which changes your team. So it's
Mhm.
a lot more than just the position of, oh, look at me, blah, blah, blah. Anyone can have a title, but not everyone can delegate that title, right? The responsibilities and all that. So those are a couple thoughts I had as Morgan was talking. Um, but
And
go ahead, Leighton. I know you had another question.
if you don't mind,
Mhm.
Lane, before you jump in, it's so crucial what Dylan just said, because if I could just give you two more quick scenarios that I lived through, is I used to have a boss, super interesting, again, leader by position. And it's true, where I used to be told by this boss that you can never let your team know that you don't know the answer. And it blows my mind. And I think about this. And again, these people in the organization are looked at as great leaders, right? And it just blows my mind. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we used to be told all the time, like, you can't let them know that you don't know the answer. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, like, it's crazy. So what do you want me to do? Just lie? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, just make something up and it's not even true. Like, I'm gonna get caught. You know what I'm trying to say? They're gonna catch me eventually and be like, man, Morgan doesn't know what the frick he's talking about. He's straight up lying. And so I think people appreciate vulnerability, right? And I understand, right? Like, if you don't know the answer, one of two things: say, hey, actually, give me a second, let me get back to you. Then go figure out the answer and then come back, right? And let them know. Or say, hey, actually, it's a great question. I've never come across that before. Let's figure it out together. And then your team's going to realize, like, man, dude, like, this dude's in the trenches with me. Like, he's trying to help me figure it out. And it's going to be able to create a tighter bond that they're going to be like, dude, I'm going to do anything for Leighton, for Dylan, because, dude, like, they've done it for me too. So it just blows my mind. Like, leadership by position is a true thing, because my own boss used to say, don't let your team know that you don't know the flipping answer. And it just like, oh, dude, it just blows my mind. And the second thing with Dylan saying, it's so spot on, guys. Like, for whoever's watching, it's so spot on. Way too many people that I worked with, they were there to just get the paycheck and to not truly make their employees' lives better. And what I mean by that is, they were just a number. The employee irritated them, gone, right? If the employee got hurt on the job, they were like blackballed. Oh, they're a freaking workman's comp issue now. Okay, we got to get them out of here, right? Like, everything had to do around money. Everything had to be based around the administrator making more money themselves in their own pocket. And so it's annoying, because you think about that and like, yeah, they're a great administrator, they're making all this money, but again, they don't even treat their people right, right? And so what is the sign of a great leader? There's so many different metrics, but it blows my mind that the number one metric that people don't look at is how many lives you've been able to positively impact, how many people you were able to bring along with you, right? And I've heard from so many people that, oh, I don't care. All I care about is me getting my paycheck, me taking care of my family. And if I got to take people down for me to continue to stay good, then so be it.
Yep.
And again, you start to hear that language, you start to hear people say that stuff. And it's exactly what Dylan said. They're not there to truly make an impact in people's lives, right? They're not there to truly help people reach their fullest potential. They're there to do what they have to do to be able to make as much money for themselves so that their family and their own back is protected. And don't get me wrong, you got to take care of your family, but you got to do it by helping and serving others and helping other people lift and get to their greatest potential. And so it's always just very interesting to me, for people that are out there that this resonates with them. Don't allow a stupid perspective of a boss, of someone that has authority over you, to make you feel like your perspective of true leadership is wrong. Because I used to think that, right? If I didn't hit a certain number, man, you feel like a crappy administrator, right? But everyone in my freaking team was doing good. And when I left, I had a lot of people reach out to me and be like, man, like, it was so much better when you were with us, or man, I wish you were still here, whatever, right? But what's the metric? What are we playing? Is it about helping people become the best that they can be and making an impact, a positive impact in their life? Or is it making money, right? And so that's the thing. But so many people allow the person above them with the power to really just, ruin their perspective, and it ends up hurting them and ends up tearing them down. No, a true leader, a true metric is how many people are you bringing along with you. And if you're not bringing people along, then as the leader, you need to reevaluate your methods, because it's not working. But I just wanted to add that in because I lived it. I lived both of those things that Dylan said, and it could not be more true. There's way too many people in leadership that are only doing it for their own pocket, and they really don't care about anybody else.
Yeah. Well, you think about it too, man, it makes sense. It's exactly the word you use. It's interesting that some people will, be in those roles, like they'll just do it for themselves, like for the money in their pocket, for their families. I get it. Like you said, you have to make, that's the whole point of why you're doing it. Like you have to make money to provide for you and your family, but at the same time, you don't want to solely just be that and not care about the building or your team or the company or whatever, because you're just gonna burn that thing down. But yeah, dude, I mean that's really true. That's a lot of people. I'd argue to say even maybe most people. You think about like people who go into the medical field, like when you ask like, oh, what are you going to do, for school? Oh, I'm going to be a nurse, right? And no disrespect to anybody who wants to be a nurse, my wife does, but you hear the politically correct answer of, yeah, it's because I like helping people, and whatever. And I really, for most people, I'll say, not everyone obviously, but for most people, I think it's just an easy answer to say, versus it pays well and I'll always have a job, because you're always going to need nurses, right? Um, so honesty on both sides, right, is needed, right? You should always be honest. If you don't know the answer, be honest. If whatever your reason of really wanting to do that or take that position, be honest. Like, I think it's awesome when people say something that's quote unquote not like the politically correct answer, because I have more respect for them. Like, oh, that's sick, dude. You're honest about it. That's dope. Like, I honestly like, because now I'm gonna believe, well, not everything you say, but um, I'm going to believe what you're saying now, because you're already honest about that. I know you're going to be honest about everything else. So I think it just is a tool that more leaders should use, just people in general, just honesty. And another thing that came to mind too before we hop off is, I have a buddy of mine who needs to step up and take a leadership role, because he's been in the same position forever. Like wherever, whatever job he goes to, he always takes the same position. I'm like, dude, you need to be in management, like the top though, not like just a key holder or an assistant. Like you need to be the manager. Like what are you doing? And he's like, I'm not trying to have those responsibilities, bro. Like I'm not, I'm cool with this. Like I can kind of just like be laid back, whatever. And so that comes to mind, because I think a lot of people are taking leadership positions even if they don't want to do it, just because the money is right. So, because I guarantee if the money was right, if it was enough and he got offered, then it's like, oh yeah, like, yeah, for sure, I'm down. Like, I probably won't be the best at it because I don't care about doing it, but still the money's good. So you take it. So that's a whole other thing where it's like, I think a lot of these leaders are just because, well, yeah, dude, I got like an extra whatever a month, or I got a bonus now and I have this and that. And so chasing the money, right? So that's most people. I think it's not about ethics, unfortunately. It's just like, making more money and how can I provide for my own family and stuff. And it sucks. But I think it's not to end it on a bad note, but just to think like, okay, if we want to be better leaders, then we have to care about our people first. It's a whole different, metric that we're looking at. So man, always good insights from you guys, man. I love story time. I'm like, I just get my popcorn, I'm just eating. I'm like, this is sick. Well, sick that now that you're out of that. But like when you're in that situation, I'm hearing about some of these things. I'm like, dang, bro, that sounds like crappy. Like it's gnarly, but but we made it out, bro. You here. So it's cool, man. Super thankful to have these conversations with you guys. And till next time.